Number 1. In bed. I live in a house with a couple roommates who were very good friends of mine growing up. One of my friends, well, we had benefits. We never were in a relationship, but it wasn't unusual for us to fool around on occasion. And the reason I bring this up will be quite clear by the end of the story. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. I had one of the bedrooms. My friend, who we call Gooch, had the other bedroom. Most often, he just took a bottle of vodka into his room and lay there while he watched television. The roommate I had benefits with, Josh, slept on the couch in the living room. Whenever he was in the mood, Josh would sometimes come into my room and we would fool around. The night this happened, I had gotten home pretty late. I was exhausted and all I wanted to do was crawl into bed. Everyone else was sleeping when I arrived, so I undressed, down to my underwear, and climbed into bed. I'm not particularly used to sleeping at night. I am sort of a reverse sleeper. When I sleep, the sun is up and I have to cover my head with a blanket. I covered myself up, and then I stared at the wall before closing my eyes. As I lay there, with earplugs in my ears, I thought I heard the door open. The earplugs were well used, and they were not as good as they once were. But I know I heard the door open, and then close. I immediately thought that Josh was wanting to fool around. I was not really in the mood at all. So I thought, if I just pretended to be asleep, he would lose interest, and go back into the living room. The fact that Josh was in my room seemed to be confirmed, as I heard some footfalls coming towards my bed. My earplugs weren't the greatest. I wasn't 100% sure until I felt something. My bed creaked a little bit, and I felt it being pushed down by the pressure of Josh's body. I sighed and immediately wished that I hadn't. Josh put his arm on my shoulder. I didn't respond. He tapped me again, and I didn't respond. I wanted him to think I was sleeping, so I kept up the act as he pulled my cover down and off of my shoulder. I then felt his hand on my shoulder, and I realized that I would have to be direct with him. I got up and turned over. There was no one in my room. I was really shocked at first because I knew Josh had been in there. I heard him. I felt him on the bed, and I felt him pull the blanket off of my shoulder. But when I turned around, there was no sign of him at all. I got out of bed. I went and turned on the light. I looked everywhere, under the bed and in the closet. No one was in there. Then I went out into the living room. Josh was laying on the couch, sound asleep, shaken. I went back into my bedroom. I couldn't turn the lights off right away. I was too scared by what had happened. I felt and I heard everything that had happened, but there was no way Josh could have come in and gotten out that quickly when I turned around. I talked to Josh about it the following day. He told me I must have been dreaming because he had not been in my room. But I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And I know what happened. It took me a long time to feel comfortable.
There was a married couple who had one young son. Even before their son was born, the couple's marriage was on shaky ground. As the years went by, the mother and father fought all the time. Their arguments became more frequent and they talked about getting a divorce. In the end, they stayed together for the sake of their son, but the arguments continued and the fights became more and more violent. By the time their son was 5 years old, the couple had grown to hate each other. One night, after they had put the boy to bed, the mother and father got into an enormous argument. The father flew into an insane rage and murdered his wife. When he came to his senses and realized what he had done, he set about disposing of the body. He dragged his wife's corpse into the garage and put her in the boot of his car. Then, he drove out to the mountains, under cover of darkness. He slung her dead body over his shoulders and carried her out to a marshy swamp nearby. He dragged her out into the foul-smelling muck and watched as her corpse sank into the murky depths. As dawn was beginning to break, he returned home to clean up and take a shower. No matter how much he scrubbed and scrubbed, he couldn't seem to get rid of that sickening smell of the swamp. He slept for a few hours, and when he awoke, he started to think about what he would do if his son asked where the mother was. He decided to tell the boy that his wife had gone to stay with her sister for a while. However, when his young son got up for breakfast, he never mentioned his mother at all. He just stared at his father and said nothing. The man could still smell the odor of the muck from the swamp where he had buried his wife. He took an air freshener and began spraying it around the house, hoping to mask the unpleasant scent. It made him feel sick. A few hours passed and the little boy was watching TV in the living room. The father began to get an uneasy feeling in the pit of his stomach. Every time he went into the living room, he noticed that his son was staring at him with a curious look on his face. It made the father feel nervous and paranoid. His mind was racing. Perhaps the boy knew what had happened, he thought. Maybe the boy overheard him murdering his mother. If his son knew what he had done, perhaps he would have to kill him as well. The father walked into the room, where his son was still watching TV.
"Is there something you want to ask me?"
He said. The boy thought for a few seconds and then replied, "Yeah,"
"Is it about your mother?"
asked the father. "Yeah," said the boy.
"I suppose you're wondering where your mother is,"
said the father. "No," said the boy. "I'm wondering why Mommy's face is so pale, and why you've been giving her a piggyback all day."
Number 3. The Cave. I go hiking a lot. I'm often alone when I go hiking, and I like it like that. However, on this particular occasion, I really wish I had someone with me. And that's not because I was really scared, even though I was, but I would just like someone to have been with me, so I could be sure that I didn't hallucinate or something. I really cannot tell you. This happened when I moved to a new house in the country. It was surrounded by woods and hills. I was excited to go out and explore it. Technically, I wasn't supposed to do that, as it wasn't my property. The area was surrounded by electric fences and barbed wire, and no trespassing signs. But honestly, that didn't mean very much. I had hiked in areas I wasn't allowed to before. I got my gear and I headed out. This was a really interesting and deeply forested area. There were no paths, no indication that anyone ever really spent any significant time in this area. The forest was dense and often hard to get through. It was pretty exciting being somewhere like that. And then the most interesting thing happened. I came across this hill when I was following a creek. There was a beautiful, tiny waterfall that I really liked, but I really didn't care about that. What I cared about was, it looked like there was a cave, about 20 feet away from the waterfall. I wasn't sure though, I had to take a closer look. In so many movies and stuff, you always see caves with really huge entrances, but in my experience, most of them are no more than 2 feet tall. And once you shimmy through the entrance, you get to the actual cave. This seemed to be the case here too. I got down on my belly at the entrance and looked in. There was definitely a cave about 20 feet in. I could hear more water running. I was a bit scared, as I always was when I came across a cave like this, but I was excited. I was crawling through the entrance when I stopped. I thought I heard a scream. I nearly hit my head on the roof of the cave and thank God I didn't. But I was still scared. But I brushed it off as me hearing things. I did not abandon my quest, though. I kept crawling through the cave. As I got a couple of feet further, I heard it again. This time, there was no doubt about it. It was a scream, and it was the scream of a child. It was undoubtedly the scream of a young girl. I froze. I'm not sure exactly how long I froze. I didn't know what to do. It was definitely the scream of a child. I thought, if a child was in the cave and in danger, I really should go into the cave and try to help her. However, crawling into the cave, in the middle of nowhere, and hearing a child scream was the most frightening thing I had ever experienced in my life. Well, up to that point at least. I didn't ponder for more than a second, though. If there was a child in there, I had to help her out. I kept shimmying through the entrance to the cave. Most of the time I was looking down to make sure I didn't run myself over or something and cut myself or something. The next time I looked up, I froze again. I pretty much likely turned white. The face of a little girl appeared at the entrance to the cave. She was trying to pull herself up onto the rock. She was translucent, however, not a solid being. She looked at me with the most sorrowful, lost eyes I had ever seen, and then she was gone. She didn't crawl back down, she just disappeared. I was so scared. I don't know how long I lay there, unsure of what to do, but after a moment I heard the scream again. And I began crawling to get out of that cave quickly. It took a while, and I was going so fast that I bumped my head on the ceiling a few times, but I still got out quickly. I then got as far away from that hill as fast as I could. I tried to be skeptical, you know. I can tell myself that what I saw was a hallucination, but I've never hallucinated before. But I really wish I hadn't been alone, because if someone else had seen what I did, I would have confirmation that it was real, and I wasn't hallucinating.
There was an 18-year-old girl named Beatrice who was in her first year at college. She lived alone in a small apartment near her university. One night, she was washing her dishes after dinner when her phone suddenly started ringing. She picked it up and saw by the caller ID that it was her friend Peter.
Hey Pete, what's up?
She asked.
Not much. I'm just bored and I wanted to see if you'd hang out.
He said.
Sure. Come on over. We could watch a movie or something. Cool. I'll be over in 15 or 20 minutes.
He said cheerfully. She hung up the phone and decided to take a shower before her friend arrived. About 10 minutes later, she was in the middle of shampooing her hair when she heard a loud knock on her front door. Sticking her head out of the shower, she shouted,
Come in. It's open.
After a few minutes later, the banging on the door started again. She stuck her head out again.
It's not locked. Just let yourself in.
Just then, her mobile phone rang. It was Peter. She answered it and said, in an irritated voice,
I'm in the shower. Why don't you stop knocking and just come in?
On the other end of the line, her friend's voice was hushed and urgent.
Don't open the door. Don't open the door.
He said. Beatrice was shocked.
Why not? I'm outside your apartment building. I just saw a strange woman going up the stairs to your apartment. She was crawling up the wall on all fours.
Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you enjoyed this video, let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please hit the subscribe button below, or use the icon of Ichigo the cat that will appear after the closing. Make sure to hit that bell too, so you'll be notified of every new video. I'd like to thank my good friends, the Grimtale brothers, for taking part in this collaboration. Please visit their channel to see the second half of the collaboration, which is also their 500 subscriber special. Congratulations to getting them to 500. I keep telling people that if we get them up to 1,000 subs, they have promised not to narc on your stash. I also want to thank everyone for the feedback about the channel. I have some ideas to add some things you might enjoy. But for now, just don't forget to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.